goal of trading is to make good trading decisions. So, I would even in my very best clients, we talk a lot about decision making. What is a good decision? What factors affect your decision making, both helpful and unhelpful. We talk a lot about becoming better at making decisions. So the goal actually of becoming a good trader is to become better at making decisions and taking risk under uncertainty. And the better you get at that, the better you get at trading, and then the better you probably end up in the overtime in terms of maximizing your market returns.
I was working at the post office at the time, which is they deliver mail here, and it was a good job. I got out of school. I was I didn't really have much direction. I didn't know, I wasn't really into trading, but I had I owned a martial arts studio, and I was teaching martial arts at the time. And my instructor was a trader, and I never knew what that was. And I ended up going to, starting to hang out with him during the day and seeing what he did. When I got off of work, I'd go down to his house and see what he did. And he explained to me about, all this stuff about, setting the alerts and looking at charts and what this chart meant, what resistance meant, what everything meant. And then I just grabbed onto it, and I said, this is why you're able to go to France all the time and you don't have a job. Is this the reason you're not working doing this? He goes, yeah, this is what I do. I said, wow, I want to do this. I don't want to work, I want to, not realize this is the hardest job I've ever had in my life, but it was something that's what drove me. I said, I want to be able to have that freedom to travel. So that was the main thing, being able to travel and live where I wanted, and being able to do a job, not have a boss, things like that, the American dream. Or the world dream. Everyone wants to do it.
I knew nothing. I didn't even realize that you could trade from home. I knew absolutely nothing. One of my jobs in a previous life was buying and selling computer chips. And I thought, I wonder if it's like that, because I loved that job. And so I went to an event, and it was a real eye-opener for me. I thought, yeah, this is something that I could try and learn. And so I just joined up and went through their process, obviously made all the mistakes that everybody makes. You must have made them as well, Etienne. Breaking your rules, every mistake, I made them. For me, it was about having the support, because I'm the kind of person that when I'm learning, I have a lot of questions. And so that's why I went down the education route rather than self-education, because I needed the feedback really on what I was doing, where I was going wrong, and a general plan of action, which really helped me. I think I learned quite quickly by listening to other traders. It probably took me maybe 6 months I was losing money for 6 months. And then I started like another 6 months of breaking even, profits, small profits. And then after that, the third 6 months, I started becoming consistently profitable. So that's when I would say that I come out of the other end as such.
When you've been doing this 20 years, you've felt every awful pain and suffering that it can inflict on you, and you've also had a lot of success and have kind of run the whole gamut. And that's how I feel right now. Sometimes when I think something will never happen again, it does. When you have a style or a strategy that you like, it might go away for years and then it comes back. And momentum trading, mean reversion trading, event trading, relationships, correlations, they work or they don't work. And it's a big art project of adapting to what's going on, and nothing stays the same. Because if it did, it'd be a very easy profession and we'd all do it. So I think the learning curve was a lot, it just was. When I started off in junior high, I was trading, my parents owned a water well drilling business and in northern Wisconsin, and they had to bail me out of a soybean margin call because I did something I didn't know what I was doing. I lost a bunch of money and I had to work the summer to make that back. And I did that, and they just wanted to support me learning, really. So that was a lesson. I don't remember what I learned at the time, but I remember then in the tech run up in 2000, I did really well. I turned some money into a bunch more money, and then I bought a car at one point for myself, which I needed, and I blew the rest of the money. I didn't know what it meant to buy a pullback. I thought, it's going up and it's just got to have to keep going up. So kind of like right now, buying every pullback. Maybe it works, and then until it doesn't. And I didn't really know what that meant. So fast forward to now, the lesson is take profits, be careful. And back then it was reckless abandon, make as much money as possible because you don't know the fear of the other side. You don't care. And I was younger too. So it's kind of an example where experience can sometimes hold you back a little. And then, but it keeps you alive and helps you to thrive later.
We were almost looking for the answer too quickly. And I think, we miss out on the joy, but also the value in the experimenting and the testing and the trying and the narrowing down. And when we look at behavior change, which is what performance improvement really is, I always frame that around self-experimentation. We're going to do an experiment. Let's test it. We've got an idea. If we try this behavior, it might impact your trading in this way. Okay, great. That's our hypothesis. Let's design an experiment. Let's test it. We'll get some feedback. We see how it goes. And, then we'll adapt it or refine it if we need to. But it's all about this kind of, I guess, a bit of playfulness, not getting too hooked into we've got to solve it right away in a certain way, but being open to different possibilities.
I had to organize myself. I had to force myself to take profits. I had to force myself to take trades. I had to be more disciplined in getting up in the morning and not just saying, well, I'll wake up whenever I want and hopefully my stock is up or down, and just being there. What I did was I wrote it down and I built a methodology. I called it my methodology. It's what I kind of teach right now. It's called the high probability methodology. And it's just knowing that not everything works in the market, but there is things that will give you the edge. And going back to what you're passionate, say you are passionate in gambling. And gambling is a great example for trading. A lot of people don't like to use the word gambling and trading together, but it really is, because you can't predict what's going on in the world. You don't know if there's going to be news the next day. It's going to cause the markets to, unless you take everything off and you're trading flat each day. But if you're great at gambling or you're a great blackjack player, you would know how to sit down at that table and set those odds in your favor, knowing when to take a hit, when to split, and do things. And these are things that have been mapped out for you by experts going forward and said, this is not an easy game. But to get a slight edge in it, you have to follow these rules because it's proven statistically, it's proven to do this. And that's what I've done with trading. I've taken certain indicators, combined them, wait for a certain setup, write it down so I know when it's written down, and I know I wrote it down. I said, well, this is something that I know works. I have to take it because I have the statistical edge in my trade to do this. And then I have, techniques to take it out, and I take it out, and that's a trade. And that's my business plan. My business plan coming in every morning is to find a certain trade, take it, and then move on, and not worry about what happens if I got out and continue to run. What if it didn't work in my favor? But it's very hard to get that mindset into being, I'm going to work each day. My business plan requires me, someone's business plan might be making cars, or you have to sell a car, you have to do this. And now mine is to identify a certain trade, execute it, know where my stop is, know where my profit is, have a trailing stop for additional, and it's just, everything is all planned out for me now. So I think that was the main thing of what made me more successful, is having that business plan and applying it.
I now hire a coach that helps me, and that's kind of where I'm getting this, but it's years later. It's actually a lot of stuff, just personality and childhood things that come up in trading. And what I mean by that is my dad would wake up really early in the morning, and he was self-made entrepreneur, and it was work hard, get up at 6 and keep working and good things will happen to you. And that was something I carried with me. And it's a really tough thing to carry with you in trading. And the reason that is because you can work really hard, but you might not get results in a linear fashion at all. I would never say you shouldn't work hard, but looking at charts on Sunday night for 3 hours isn't going to mean you're going to make any money. In fact, it might mean you're going to force on Monday and do worse. Because a lot of times stuff shows up kind of innately on its own. It's a little bit intuitive, and you kind of know it when you see it. And there's a very delicate process to figuring that out. And this idea of working hard nonstop and being kind of in basketball, they call you a gym rat. When you never left the gym, you're always shooting. And that attitude, I wouldn't say it's bad, but it doesn't necessarily work that way in trading. So I've had to learn to unwind a lot of that and let things kind of flow when they flow. When the market shows up and it's my game, I'm successful. But when I force it, when it's not, it's painful. And I think that's the biggest thing that I have had to learn, and I continue to kind of work with even now.